Hello and welcome to the session 2 part of this course, which is CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. It works hand in hand with HTML. HTML is responsible for sorting out the page structure, whilst CSS defines how HTML elements are displayed. Now think of HTML as the human body and CSS as the clothes we wear to appear and look good. Or another example is the human body is the HTML, then the makeup we put on is the CSS. Now there are three ways of adding CSS to a web page. We have the inline method, the internal, and the external. Now let us see how this looks like in the browser. First, let me get rid of our form. And then let's look at the inline CSS. The inline CSS is added to a tag. So let's make a P tag quickly and write and generate a lorem text. Just type lorem and hit the tab button, and Visual Studio Code will automatically do the rest for you. Okay, now in order to add the inline style, first write the attribute style, and the value is, let's say you want to give this paragraph text a text of the color blue. So let's say color blue. So save this and open up the browser, and as you can see, our paragraph text changed to blue. We can change the text to red and refresh it, and it appears in red. Okay, cool. Now then I look at the internal method of adding CSS. This method goes in the head tag. So inside this head tag, we first define a style tag, and within that style tag we add the target, which is the paragraph. Let me add another paragraph over here. Generate a lorem text, and then target paragraph and add curly braces. So P curly braces, and inside of it let's give it a color of green. Save this and see it in the browser, and it appears green. And the last method of adding CSS is the external method. This method is the best way to work with HTML and CSS. And with this way, we add a different text file and add the CSS in that. So let us head into our folder and create a new text file. No, actually let's create it in the Visual Studio Code text editor. So file, new file, then we click file and save as, and this time around when we add our name, we are going to be saving it with the extension of .css. So click on save, and then we have our style tag. So let's add another paragraph tag, And then we target our paragraph, and inside same method we use in the second method, we write the p tag, and inside the curly braces we write the color of violet. Now, in order for this to work, we need to link the new style, the CSS file that we just created. So, and the way of adding this is writing the link tag, and then with the rel you give it a value of style sheet with the type of test/CSS, and then the destination to the file is href. So in this case it's called style.css, so write style.css, and then we close it. That's basically what Visual Studio Code generated for us here. So let us go with this one. So I'll just clean this up and then change the main to style.css, and then let us save this and also save the style.css. Open up the browser and refresh. Green. Let me just clean this up. Save and refresh. Now, what happened was that with the styles, the three ways of adding them, each one has greater authority over the other. So in our case, the inline style of adding the color red has greater authority over the rest. So let's say we target all p styles and give it a color of red. No matter how many colors we give to the others, let's say we add a style tag here and write green, and we give the external also a color of green, still the inline tag will override the rest of them. So the inline tag has greater authority over the rest. So in our case, the internal also add greater authority over the external. So once we clean that up, the rest of the paragraph text turn to violet, while still the inline tag remains red. So do take note of that. Okay. In this lecture, we are going to be learning about CSS syntax or rules. Let us learn the rules to begin styling. This syntax has three parts, namely the selector, property, and value. The CSS rule set consists of a selector and a declaration block. So the selector points to the HTML element you want to style, whilst the declaration block contains one or more declarations separated by semicolons. So the declaration contains the CSS property name and a value. You need selectors to identify which HTML element needs to be styled. They are classified by ID, class, and type. Let's see how this works. Getting rid of the examples from our previous lessons. Okay, so we have our paragraph tag, and then this P is the selector. So this is selecting the paragraph tag, and within the declaration block, which is the curly braces, we have our property of color and then our value of violet. So let us look at the ID selector. With the ID selector, if you want to style HTML element uniquely, then you use the ID attribute by adding it to the element. CSS can select HTML elements by their ID attribute. To select an ID element, use the ID name with the hashtag. Okay, so let us see an example of this. So first, we add an ID attribute of, let's give it the name of example, and then in the CSS, let's clean this up and use the hashtag to select the ID. So we gave it the name of example, and then within a declaration block, let's give it a property of color, and then change it to gold. Save this and also save the HTML and refresh it in the browser, and our text just turned gold. That's the ID selector. We also have the class selector, which work the same way. The major difference is IDs are applied uniquely and only once per page, whilst classes can be used as many times on a page as possible. Let us look at how the class looks like. We have another p tag, and now giving it a class of example 2. Save this, open the style sheet, and with the class, the way we select this is by using the dot instead of the hash time this time, which means the ID. So dot example 2, and within the curly braces, we add a color of red. So saving this, refresh in the browser, and then our red color appears. Cool. Now with the class, more than one class name can be added to the HTML elements class attribute. What I mean by this is, let's add another class of big. We do this by adding space and writing big, and then you target the big class, and let's say this time around the font size should be equal to 20 pixels, and let's just save this and refresh. Forgot to save the HTML, so save the HTML and refresh, and then our font size got increased to 20 pixels. Cool. We also have descendant selectors, and they are used to select elements that are descendants of another element. Let me give you an example of this. Let's say we have a div tag, and within that div tag we have another p tag, and within that p tag we have the class of hello world. Now let us wrap a span tag around this hello world. Okay, now that we have done this, let us move into the style And by using the descendant selectors, first we write the div tag, and then the p tag, and finally our span tag. Within it, let's make the font size 30 pixels. Save this and refresh the browser. I forgot to save my HTML again. So saving this, Ctrl S, hit F5, and you can see the descendant selector targeted the span tag, which is the word, and made the text 30 pixels. Let's move on to the next lesson.